Welcome, everyone. As we usually do, we start with a short meditation. Let us achieve comfort, alignment, and control. We are told that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And that is an occult statement of fact. Find a comfortable, relaxed position. Take a few slow, deep, and quiet breaths. Find emotional stillness. Let go of any stress or worries. Attempt to simply be here now. Imagine your emotions are like a still pond of clear and pure waters. Then say 3 times to yourself, I, the observer, stand and see things flow. The mind is an instrument used by the thinker. Say, I see thoughts like clouds come and go, but I just observe. Recognize that you are the soul, the observer, an expression of love and light. Visualize a pure white light pouring down from the eternal, overshadowing soul, flooding all the personality, stabilizing, purifying, quieting, and directing it in service. Then say, may the energy of the Divine Self inspire me and the light of the soul direct. May I, through that spiritual energy, which is my higher self, be led from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from mortality to immortality. Embraced with our Divine Self, we remain in stillness. And when you are ready, open your eyes. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. This will be our last session in English. Tomorrow we start our our Spanish program, and so I will finish. I will have the second part, or we'll give you the second part of chapter 9 we spoke about yesterday, and Eduardo will give you the final conclusions. Let's do a brief summary of what we spoke about yesterday. Let me remember that the title of chapter 9 is the royal knowledge and the king of secret. Yes. Let's make a very brief comment on or summary on chapter 9. You remember that Krishna observes that Arjuna is already a qualified aspirant and endowed with faith. Krishna declares Arjuna the sovereign knowledge and the sovereign secret that is to be known by direct experience. He also adds that without faith in this knowledge, man fails to reach God and is reborn to suffer. The Lord describes his nature as the eternal, all-comprehensive truth. He is everything that is visible and invisible. He pervades everything that exists. He creates everything, sustains everything, and when the final dissolution takes place, absorbs everything into himself. He manifests them again when the next creation begins, and emphasizes that all beings who are ignorant of this knowledge are caught helplessly in the cycle of birth and death. This royal secret cannot be told into words, because this secret is settled in the innermost heart of man, and has remained there for countless ages, awaiting the day when the disciple is able to break the veils of ignorance and be able to perceive this shining secret in their own heart. There's no doubt that faith, or Shraddha, is required to reach this knowledge. And let me remember that this faith is not an intellectual belief in any set of dogmas or rites. It's the inner conviction that somewhere there is a knowledge, and as I said yesterday, a knowledge with capital letters. And this knowledge will save the world from the chains of sorrow. We also spoke about the idea of the one life, or the universal self, that pervades and animates all of existence. And we introduced the notion that although countless beings experience the cycle of life, striving, enjoying, suffering, dying, and being reborn, the essence of this one life remains eternally free and unattached. The Atman, the self, or the divine essence within each individual, is unaffected by the actions and experiences of the individual beings. It remains untouched by the transient nature of life and death, existent in a state of eternal freedom and detachment. The one life, or Atman, is beyond the dualities of pleasure and pain, birth and death. And who is able to see that? The yogi. The yogi, that one who sees in the heart of all beings and all beings in one's heart, in one's own heart. So, up to now, just what we spoke about yesterday. And what is the yogi, and what are all of us in a way? We are aspirants. We want to live the spiritual life. And we have to live this spiritual life in this world as pilgrims. And so human beings should live their lives while the ties of karma keep them bound here. However, yogic life does not consist of mechanically cultivating a specific set of virtues. Virtue should emerge from the negation of unreal things through the use of discernment or viveka. Both the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali and the Bhagavad Gita refer to abhyasa, which is the constant examination in daily life of our thoughts, emotions, and actions, and in order to discover to what extent and in what manner they arise from a false perception. Everything is transient, even the earth and the mountains. The only reality is life, which knows no decrease or end. But the transient and unreal appear before the sleeping consciousness appears before the sleeping consciousness as absolutely real. And as a result of this mistaken perception, the mind becomes attached to many things, and therefore people live in conflict and suffering. The practice of discernment leads to detachment. Then, in the eyes of the observer, all the world is a stage. As a consequence, they realize that their own personality is a mask, and that the self-identity is based on the superficial qualities of this personality, such as their position in life, appearance, and achievements. The Buddhist discipline of vipassana, which involves observing every aspect of the personality, including the way one walks and talks, separate from emotions and reactions, serves as a foundation to draw on the personality and grow into kindness. Through the development in awareness, the denial of every feeling, thought, or motive that affirms or sustains individuality arises. Additionally, the aspirant must do everything possible to guide the mind towards universal harmony. So, then, what is the force that keeps the mind of every individual disturbed and causes permanent mental modifications? According to the adepts of occultism, it is the force of desire called vasana, a word that indicates not only desire in its active form, but also the tendencies that remain in the subconscious mind, and that serves as a strong potential source of future mental desires, of future active desires. These samskaras, that is to say, mental impressions left by thoughts, have their roots in our attachment to objects, and together constitute a powerful force that keeps us bound to the lower worlds of Maya, illusion, and they are, of course, impermanent, perishable, mutable. Many people confuse a temporary and superficial reduction of active desires with a mental state that leads to the gradual disappearance of changes in the mind. They forget the tremendous potential desires, the tremendous pressure exerted on the mind by the innumerable potential desires that are present in the subconscious regions of the mind, ready to appear as soon as conditions arise in a state of mental or emotional paralysis. Old age, a long illness, or frustration reduce us to a stage of imagining that we have acquired that mental state or detachment known as vairagya. But there is not such. Desires are temporarily quelled and will reappear and assert themselves as soon as we regain mental balance or begin a new incarnation under new circumstances. The problems of spiritual lives are not to be solved so easily. And people should be very well aware of the factors involved in these problems. This is not to say that we are exaggerating on the topic of desires in particular, but if a person truly wishes to internally overcome those aspects that they know negatively influence the possibility of internal or spiritual advancement, they should take the above mentioned seriously into account. Before dealing with the fundamental problem of desire and its elimination, it is necessary to carefully analyze the genesis of desire and its significance. In The Voice of the Silence, HBV mentions kill desire. And we are explained that the mind is the killer of the real. But a deeper analysis tells us that the power that moves the mind is desire, and the mind is nothing but its tool. Therefore, desire is our true adversary, and if we want to attack it effectively, we have to know it very well first. The most effective method of solving a problem is to go to its root, or to its root cause, and combat it there instead of dealing only with the effects that flow from that cause and will continue to flow it in another form or another. I need to drink. Let me say that again, please. The most effective method of solving a problem is to go to its root cause, and combat it there instead of dealing only with the effects that flow from that cause and will continue to flow from it in order to, in another form or another, as long as the cause is not removed. The modern tendency is to deal only with effects and apply palliatives to them, leaving the causes alone. That is why no problem is ever effectively and permanently resolved. The international conflicts of today's world illustrate this trend very well. They are based on rivalries and hatred and mutual exploitation, coming from ignorance or forgetfulness that all creatures share a common life. Life is not taken into account when you exploit or hurt others, when you are violating the central and most fundamental law of nature based on the unity of life. And that is why there are more and more problems, conflicts, and hardships. So, if we want to completely eliminate and permanently eliminate desire in order to fully and constantly establish ourselves with our real self, the obvious thing to look is to look for the fundamental cause of desire in its various forms and eliminate that cause. The rest will come in due course. So we have to trace the genesis of desire. We have to know where does it come from. And so we have to remember the way in which the inner being, which is essentially divine, as an expression of the reality that sustains and permeates the universe, has become involved in manifestation. Let us recognize that it has become involved, and that he has to earn his salvation, his own salvation, by regaining the knowledge of his own divinity and permanently establishing himself in his real divine nature. Any comments up to now? Any thoughts? Yes.
Marcella, could you repeat again? You said something about when exploitation takes place,
Yes.
the humanity of the person or people is not taken into consideration. Could you just
Read again?
return to that
Yes,
for a
of
moment?
course.
Thank you.
No, of course. Let me see. We were speaking about the international conflicts of today's world. Yes. And those conflicts are based on rivalries and hatred and mutual exploitation coming from ignorance or forgetfulness that all creatures share a common life. That common life we spoke about yesterday. It is not taken into account when you exploit or hurt others, because we are violating the central and most fundamental law of nature based on the unity of life. And that's why there are more and more problems, and we cannot find the solutions.
That's very well put.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Somebody else? Yes, Carol.
I just think it's really important that it's desire that causes the thoughts. Because there's talk in Theosophy and other places about thoughts are clouds and dispel them, but they're going to keep coming, and the desire can be so simple, and it doesn't have to be a craving or a longing. It's just how we live. So that's really, thank you for that. I think that's like a really big clue.
Yes, the thing is that desire and the lower self are very good friends. And that's the best instrument for desire, the lower self. Yes, Martin.
Thank you. Thank you. So, do you think that the movement from what you just described and a feeling or a sense of fraternity, universal fraternity, like we say in Theosophy, that we all one and we should all be fraternal, that is possible by not being selfish, and therefore we can eliminate borders, nationalistic ideas, separation among people in this world. Is that one-to-one? You know,
I
like the
should say
moment
that.
we are fraternal, there is no need for borders, no need of sense of countries and nationalities.
Yes,
And
like John Lennon.
like John Lennon, exactly. Imagine, imagine. And a lot of people react against John Lennon for saying no religion, no borders, no. So I'm trying to understand the root of why people are saying that. I found some words in what you said, so I want your opinion on that.
I think that those, religion, fanatism, prejudices are all barriers against unity, against brotherhood. And it's easy to talk about, that, but when we come to our real life, I mean the everyday life, we have to face that. And that's a real challenge for each of us, because we read these beautiful words and they do something in their minds and in their hearts, in our hearts. But when the situation comes, we are tested on how strong those beliefs are how strong the seed is in our hearts, the seed of brotherhood. Eduardo.
That gives us a clue in terms of what that relationship between the mind and desire is. Because, desire is a universal and very neutral force. Yeah. I mean, the problem of separation is in the mind. So that we talked about, I think, yesterday. We don't just desire, we desire something, and that something is a thought form. That's a very human experience. So we require that direct object, that which we desire. Desire is universal, it's not good nor bad, so it is the mind, in a way, that creates and fabricates that sense of separate self, which is also a thought form, and not only in individuals, as nations. We have a national thought form created by the past and the history of that nation. So it works not only in individuals, in groups of individuals. But, desire is the motivating force, but then why is it that the mind always comes up and creates that thought form? Because we give desire, it's built, it's something, we don't know what that is that we desire in essence, because it's outside. It's something we don't understand. Maybe it's just vacuum, maybe it's just an object we cannot really in essence know. But what we desire is that thought form created that always comes up when desire begins to act as an engine. So, I think in that relationship between desire and the mind is one key.
Yes, I think that dynamic is really something that needs to be experienced directly. But also there are so many levels of desire. And it seems to me that the essence of it is a sense of deep lack, deep loss, a lack of remembering that we have descended, essentially, from something in which there is no lack. There is a complete fulfillment and a complete wholeness in the heaven worlds we have descended through in order to make our home here. So as long as the heart is not fulfilled in its own imagination, it looks outwardly for something to help with that feeling of emptiness. And it will always be there until we begin to realize that we're living we can be living in a way so deeply connected with each other that we fulfill each other. We fulfill each other's needs without even thinking about it. We're there for each other. So, but that requires the transcendence of this idea that we are essentially separate.
From my experience, battling desire doesn't work too well. I think the way through, my point of view, is you raise the object of desire. And if it's like energy, you can raise the energy from the lower chakras to the heart. There are disciplines with that. So if you can raise the object of desire to maybe something worthy of devotion spiritually, then that becomes the overwhelming desire, or enlightenment, or whatever, and the lower ones can fall away. But to try and fight them on the level of the lower plane, I don't think it works too well, as well.
No, I agree with you. We don't have to fight it, we have to know it. And we have to know the nature of the desire and appeal, as you said.
Or
Nature
find
of
a higher plane, but
Yeah.
the desire will always be there. Because we
Yes.
look for something we think will make us happy. So, but the more we can raise the object of the desire, that takes place of the others, I think.
Yes, speak.
I was thinking exactly the same thing, that battling with the desire, there's so many, it would be like a constant war. But I think that the desires start to diminish as the consciousness shifts. As we, like Maria said, we start to remember that our own one essence, and pay homage and bow down to our own essence, the one essence, that in a way kind of fulfills the outer desires. There is a contentment you were talking about. There is this contentment without having things, just by being. And of course desires might pop up, because thoughts and desires are still lurking. But then they kind of start to die on themselves without any effort and battling. So I was thinking of the same thing. And then you mentioned also earlier about, which I was pondering about, the virtues, that the virtues arises from that shift again, from that knowingness that we are the one essence, and there is no need to pick a virtue and try to become it. It's there anyways, kind of like the layers fall away, and then the virtues start to arise by themselves without any effort. So it's pretty much the same thing, that when the second self, the notion and the idea of second self goes away, and we feel that unity, which is true spirituality, then things start to settle.
Yes, Jorge, please.
Yes. I'm quoting someone else, from Ravi Ravindra, saying that awareness is the beginning of the process of self-transformation. And that if we are constantly aware of what we do rather than living an auto mode, then we will find ourselves, our motivations, and we can redirect them. But we have to live in the present moment, right here, right now, constantly, to shift from the world of mechanical desires into purpose, purposefully having something positive that we are aware of, that can transform ourselves in that manner. And by being consistent, we can live in the present and live according to our true nature, manifest ourselves.
Thank you. So shall we go on? So, we were speaking about tracing the genesis of desire. And then we have to remember the way in which the inner being, which is essentially divine as an expression of the reality that sustains and permeates the universe, has become involved in manifestation. Let us then recognize that it has become involved and that he has to earn his own salvation by regaining the knowledge of his own divinity and permanently establishing himself in his real divine nature. And this is an exercise of imagination. Let us first try to imagine how he will feel and behave in the world of manifestation, where such a divine being lives in exile, who has strayed from his nature home and has forgotten who he is and what his real nature is. But he is hidden, obscured and covered by different vehicles of increasing density and cannot express himself on these lower planes except with increasing difficulty and distortion. It is easy to see that whatever his expression is on the lowest plane will be like a dim and disfigured reflection of his innermost nature. This is us. This is us. Furthermore, with all his activities and endeavors, the inner being will be searching directly and indirectly for that which he has lost. Be aware in the most intimate part of his heart, the royal secret. He has lost consciousness of his divine nature, and therefore it is natural that in the darkness of his ignorance he gropes for those things which in the lower worlds of illusion and limitations are but a pale reflection of his nature and do not give him even partial satisfaction to his most intimate desire. What is the nature of this divinity, and how far can we understand and judge it through the veils of intellect? In mystical literature such as the Upanishads or the sacred writings of different traditions, they show that the inner being is the center of consciousness of the universal spirit, omnipotent, omniscient, eternal, self-determined and free, which is love itself. In short, he has all the attributes associated with divinity. That is why those attributes, which are diverse aspects of his essential nature, will be sought by the inner being, consciously or unconsciously, in the various objects that he pursues. The inner being is potential omniscient in the world of reality with capital letters, and therefore seeks knowledge in the world of the unreal. The inner being is pure glory in the real world, and therefore seeks happiness in the world of the unreal. He is free and independent in the world of the real. That is why he seeks freedom in the unreal world. He is eternal in the world of the real and seeks immortality in the world of the unreal. He is one with all other beings in the world of the real, and therefore seeks unity and love in the world of the unreal. And so we can take these different objects of search for those universal human characteristics that seem to be embedded in human nature and trace them back to the real, with capital letters, nature of the real, of the inner being. They are derived from it and are partial and disfigured reflections in our world. Then we understand why there is everywhere this desire and search for knowledge, for power, for happiness, freedom, immortality, and love that characterizes human beings to different degrees according to their temperament, their personality, and the particular phase of internal development they are going through. They are simply searching for what they potentially are in their intimate and essential nature, and what they are to become as a result of the evolutionary cycle they are going through in their own individual and unique way. Any comments? Yes?
What popped into my mind, I think Albert Einstein once said, you can never solve a problem on the same level as the problem.
Great.
So again, there are no answers there,
You have, yes. Maria.
Yes, you described, I think, beautifully the human dilemma and why the masters have called this path of return the path of woe. Because once we begin to realize how seriously disordered we are as a humanity, the more we begin to understand the greater the need, the urgent need to assist in the best way we can. That's why I think compassion has been called the law of loves. When the heart begins to be more sensitive, it suffers. It suffers with our human condition. And look at how deeply we are affected globally today by the state we're in. The problems of depression, addiction, the sense of hopelessness, the rise in cruelty and fear, all of it relates to our human dilemma.
Yes.
And I think, you've caught it beautifully. And the answer is stand your ground. The meditation we began with this morning is an example. Stand and observe. Observe with your whole nature and understand what's going on. And then you'll know the next step in your own life.
Shall we go on? Martin, you wanted to add something else? I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, I was trying to formulate that, like Plato said, that the change has to start from childhood, from education, to change those vrittis, to change the way that we think. Otherwise, he said, we imitate falseness, false ideas. So I think that's one of our biggest problems, that we don't educate in that, what you explain as that reality, that field of consciousness that we all want. We don't tell that to children. We give them a sense of, you are great, you are different, you are on your own, this is competition,
must
they
be
are
the
there
best
to destroy you.
in every field.
Exactly.
And it's impossible.
So you think that there is something there like children's education? Do you see any advance in that
I think
humanity is doing?
that would be the foundation for a wealthy humanity.
Yeah.
Wealthy in spiritual aspects, of course. I was listening to the radio last week before coming to the States, that there's a man who lives in the States, and he's an Argentinian, and he visited, for instance, different countries which are they measure the happiness in their population. And he went to Delhi, and there's many schools which are working on that. And for instance, they make children meditate as a task. Children meditate every day. They have to learn how to struggle with what's the word in English when things don't come out as you want, disappointment, or when you're not successful at some yes, thank you. And so what do? They every day, every hour that the children have about how to deal with that disappointment or failure, they have to tell the teacher and their own mates in what something that they could not achieve, and tell the story, and then ask them to think about how to solve that problem, because we are going to live with disappointment our lives. And the funny story was that they use as an example the Argentinian, the World Cup, the World Football Cup, in which Argentina, which was the favorite winner, they lost their first football team game, and how after that the whole team engaged in winning the cup, but it was a strike for Argentinian pride, which is very, very big, I'm afraid. And so, yes.
Marshall Rosenberg, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, or if anyone is, he's a psychologist. And he started an approach to nonviolent communication. And he teaches workshops all over, or he did, he passed away now, but he started a school in Israel he wanted 100 Israelis, age 5, and 100 Palestinians, and they would go to school. And I think he did it somewhere in South America, but or Africa, he did it, in Africa. And because again, he said you have to start when they're young for that. But anyway, his books are out there. It's a good, and his whole approach is based on empathy.
Well,
you communicate from empathy. So, you see the other, and of course you listen.
There was a very important music director, Barenboim, who he created an orchestra and musicians from Palestine and from Israel. They work together.
It starts with a B.
Barenboim.
Pardon?
Barenboim.
Right, that was.
Yes.
The BBC did an interview with him. Yes, I heard it once.
The Republic, that politicians should be educated and trained from a very, very early age. And that's the confusion we have, why everyone supposes that Plato advocated a monarchy. No, he just said that the ablest, the one who is really trained, should govern, should rule. So in the same way as if a boat is sinking, you wouldn't just do a vote to know who's going to hold the helm. You just call the one trained for that, the one who has been prepared from a very early age. Well.
Trained in what way, though?
Compassion.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
As you were speaking, I was thinking of that great title of Chomsky's book, the lunatics are running the asylum.
Yes.
And that's what government sometimes really feels like.
Yes, yes.
And educating, as we see, many of Krishnamurti's schools are working exactly with that premise. Allow the inner child to come out, reinforce that and encourage that, and that empathy, that compassion, that concern for others. That's all there, and it's there on a daily basis in everything that they do. And they're not suffering from, I mean, we know now people who have grown up, gone into professions, married, lead lives, and they have not suffered from not having just pure academics, where we do that in regular schools, pushing that to the point where the kids are having nervous breakdowns because they can't compete with others. So I think those schools are just great, and the premise is there. Krishnamurti doesn't have to be here for that to be understood, even though, you know, there's always the commercial aspect to running a school, which changes the school. But that's another subject.
Yes, sir.
If we observe nature, we can learn from that. But since the opening of the industrial age, people become very involved with work. At the beginning, they can work 100 hours a week. Later on, they establish 40 hours. Now they go to 30 hours, 31 or less. So civilization invented the vacation, traveling. They show you where to go, how to spend your life, how to be happy, they say. So that in that way, you don't live life. So I observe in my young age, because when I live in the farm, the ants, they were very busy carrying leaves for winter time. The ants don't stop in a corner of the street to talk on the sense or look at the sky. The bees, the same. They busy working to storage honey. So, because of the nothing to do, in certain way created Freud and then Jung, and then people think, okay, they want to fix me, they want to repair me. But essentially we are responsible, and we are lazy to learn to know who we are.
That's my next point. Thank you. So, we were saying that we are searching, and we are searching in the wrong place. I mean, in the place we are living in. So, in this transformation of potential divinity into active lies the meaning of hidden maxim, become what you are. But the words potential and active do not have an ordinary meaning here. The difference between the inner being before entering the evolutionary cycle and after it has completed it is one of the enigmas of philosophy that human intellect, subject to illusion, cannot truly understand. It is part of the transcendental knowledge that is born within the heart of a liberated human being when he reaches realization. But comes the question, How can the light be worshipped? How can we rise to the eternal Krishna? The way to Krishna is not any complicated rites or ceremonies, but rather to sheer giving. Sheer giving. The disciple must reverse that process of self-centeredness and cultivate a selfless. Instead of solely focus on personal gain or accumulation, the individual seeks to move beyond the limitations of the ego, the lower ego, and connect with a broader, more universal perspective. Giving away instead of getting emphasizes the importance of selfless service and generosity. By offering one's time, resources, and the energy for the benefit of others, individuals can break from the narrow confines of self-interest. This attitude, as mentioned in the Gita, is a key aspect of the path of karma yoga. Involves engaging in activities with dedication and sincerity, but relinquishing attachment to personal gains or recognition. Besides, reversing the process of grasping involves cultivating compassion, empathy, and altruism. By understanding the struggles and joys of others, individuals can foster a sense of interconnectedness and move beyond a self-centered perspective. No special privileges can be found upon this path, but at the same time, those who seek to offer themselves to Krishna with an open heart will be always accepted. Hints are given by HPV in practical occultism. The student's thoughts must be mainly on his heart, driving away from it all hostile thoughts towards any living being. This, that is to say, the heart, must be filled with a feeling of its non-separativity from the rest of the beings and from everything in nature. Otherwise, success, that is to say, in the path, is not possible. I found this very, very deep for our lives. We must always keep in mind the proposition that there is an unborn and immortal existence called spirit or Atma, and that is the essence of all living things. The most serious student of theosophy considers such thoughts as a proposition whose implications must be experienced in daily life to see what results are obtained. Thus, working with this, or with such a premise, reduce fear and attachment. Where do attachment and fear come from? Perhaps they are born from a different unconscious premise of the day-to-day mind that believes that only what knows it is real. But what is the mind? That is to say, the lower mind, kama manas. This mind knows only what is transitory, lasting only a few years. One or the other of these premises is correct. Both cannot be. The question to which we must answer then is, which premise, taken as a working hypothesis, results in harmony, peace, and true happiness, and which creates fear and confusion? To discover this, we must observe what happens in our own minds and in the minds of others. Then man can advance promptly if he so wishes, because he doesn't need to go through all kinds of experience to learn the lessons of various experiences. If he is intelligent and perceptive, he can learn from what happens to others. It is essential to begin with the premise that the essence of the individual is spirit, not matter. This spirit is indivisible and indestructible. If we live our daily life as made of experiences seriously basing ourselves on this assumption, we may discover many truths that become living realities as we progress. What began as an assumption becomes a truth, becomes self-evident. It's a big difference between a belief that is claimed and a truth that is known. If these ideas are not questioned, tested, and examined in our daily life, they may not have a much practical value. On the other hand, the way of living based on experiments invites us to work on the basis that there is an indestructible and indivisible spirit. In the many relationships we have in our lives, while we study, we think, when we meet other people, if we act with that premise, a change will occur, because the approach is radically different from the usual one. With this point of view, fear diminishes. And I would like to make a break, and we shall continue. Hello again. Just a few more thoughts, and then Eduardo will finish our work today. As we said before, yoga is integrity, the path that leads to integrity. Divisions exist in the mind, not in nature. Within the mind, then, there is a separation between the self and the other, between the noun and the latter, between the action, the result, between the means and the end. Until such divisions exist, it is logical that problems will arise, because they are unnatural violations of the law of natural or universal harmony. But the power of evolution or nature has its own method to bring everyone back to the right path and to restore harmony. The disturbances and shocks that people experience are nature's way when their lives do not resonate with the one life. And their loneliness, anguish, and lack of meaning in life are experienced. Disturbances can be eliminated only when the divisions in the mind and their cause have been removed. Fighting external factors is not putting an end to an internal turmoil. The Gita describes the yogi as an individual who acts, remaining immaculate and unaffected like the leaves of the lotus that are not damaged by water. Understanding and spiritual progress are reflected in relationships, love, selflessness, and humility that radiate from that person. Both in the Gita and in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras teach that discrimination or viveka and firm application, abhyasa, are fundamental to yoga. Discernment is always necessary to carry out what it is essential. Without it is possible to get lost on all kinds of collateral paths that do not lead to the goal. Through constant practice of discernment, true intelligence is developed. But this intelligence is not the same one that the words talks about. Ability motivated by ambition is not intelligence. True intelligence may also seem like extravagance to the capable man because it is not guided by worldly standards. Worldly intelligence has produced murderous weapons of war, but does not know how to stop wars. It is the origin of many wonderful feats, but it is not interested in what people mostly want, that is, peace and happiness. The brain ability, normally called intelligence, is destructive. But true intelligence, which grows from the persevering use of the faculty of discernment by reflection about what is constantly important and what is not, about what is real and what is unreal, such intelligence, it can never be destructive. On the contrary, it is the basis of virtue. The enlightened beings, who are the elder brothers of humanity, are those who have the absolute virtue of all-embracing and inexhaustible love and compassion. These are the natural expression of this perfect wisdom. They are what they are because of yoga, because no one can become an adept except for his own effort and self-sacrifice. They are the owners of that elevated knowledge that can be called theosophy. They know that by which everything else is known. Oh, thank you. Eduardo.
Thank you, Marcela. So, these days, this work we shared, we have brought to consideration the main topics that arise in the dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. So at this stage, we may well ask ourselves and try to find out what the essence is of this jewel of ancient thought. And mostly, what remains with us upon reading the Bhagavad Gita. I will now share my thoughts, some thoughts as conclusion of this work we've been sharing these days. Like many other writings of this period, such as the Upanishads and the Dhammapada, the Bhagavad Gita, or Song of the Lord, seems timeless, and this is one of the aspects we have been focusing these days. That goes very much in line with Blavatsky, with what was Blavatsky's main focus of study in her whole work. She said that the study of ancient myths and legends and ancient texts have occupied the greater portion of her life. So maybe we have to take into account this timeless nature of these texts. So the story is relevant whether we lived 1,000 years ago or we're living in the modern age. So it shouldn't be less relevant for us today, we explored what happened to Arjuna, what happened when Arjuna has to make difficult, life-changing decisions, specifically the decision as to whether he should battle against his own family members in a war of good versus evil. We have talked about that, and the importance of living a life of truth and purpose. Arjuna understood that he is a warrior and finally sounded the horn to start the battle, even with the horrors that were about to come. He went beyond his personal attachments and identifications represented by all those against whom he had to fight and kill. If they were his family, it means that the decision to abandon the descending or outgoing path, what we called yesterday the pravritti marga, and tread the path of return, the nivritti marga, involved moving out of his comfort zone, ignoring those old dear things and fulfilling his duty with detachment. So let us have for last time that scene in mind. Arjuna disoriented with a feeling of futility, that everything is in vain, a feeling so familiar to all of us who tread the path, by the way. He cries, "I will not fight, Nayotse, I will not fight." And thus ends the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So the book, from its initial pages, unfolds a remarkable scenario, unprecedented in literature. Amidst the escalating tension between two armies, Krishna, positioned in the heart of a battlefield, imparts the most sacred teachings to Arjuna. Krishna, observing Arjuna's reluctance to wield his weapons and engage in battle, emphasizes the equivalence of victory and defeat. He urges Arjuna to act without dwelling on the outcomes, that is, the fruit of action, emphasizing that as a warrior, a kshatriya, he must fulfill his duty without attachment or guilt, even if it entails fighting against his own kin. Krishna advises, seek detachment, engage in battle without desire, a subject which was one of the main topics these days, by the way. So Arjuna was confused. You tell me to seek detachment, and yet you urge me to slaughter. Your words are ambiguous. I'm confused. And Krishna replies, renunciation is not enough. I'm just summing up. Do not withdraw. You must act, but action must not dominate you. And Arjuna looked perplexed. How could one put all that into practice when the mind is so capricious, unstable, evasive, feverish, turbulent, tenacious, and harder to subdue than the wind? Krishna thus taught the warrior the art of right observation, so important in every disciple. In the heart of action, one must remain free from all attachment, and see with the same eye the mound of earth and the heap of gold, a cow and a sage, the dog and the man who eats the dog. So the Gita marks the moment when the rules change and the great decision to abandon the way of descent and start the way of ascent takes place. And you know, we've talked very much about this problem of desire and the mind. And this very moment from the Gita can help us have a different view on contemporary life, in a way. The advice to act without desire, to act with detachment, may sound strange when in our environment that is precisely which is encouraged. We know that desires cannot be suppressed, lest we have serious consequences. Desire, as we said, is a universal force. neither good nor bad. But any deep observer knows that in alliance with the mind, it has no limit. One desire leads to another, which is the same as saying that one thought form leads to another. And final satisfaction is never reached, never attained. I think we know that in little things in life. Today we see it in the market, which stimulates desire to promote consumption. We see it on the web, the social media, where so many people spend so long. But time is money, and the more we stay connected, the more publicity, of course. Desire has been an important engine in human evolution, since it helped generate consciousness. But as the human being awakens to a higher reality, he becomes more of an observer and ceases to identify himself with his vehicles, since he increasingly recognizes himself as something deeper and subtler. We may call that the soul, the higher being. It's an energy. So in that unveiling and discovering what we essentially already are, the rules change. The mind repolarizes, and all that remains is to fulfill one's obligations, duty with detachment, as Krishna said. With the mind set on another higher goal, why not? Even in the process, when desires still stir inside, then the aspirant finds some kind of peace, which is only a sign or something, a glimpse of the real peace he will one day eventually find for himself. And he discovers that by slowing down his emotional reactions, he can fulfill his duties more efficiently, let's say. So, thus we come to the perhaps most interesting and often misunderstood aspect of the Gita. And it's entirely representational and highly symbolic nature. There's no actual battlefield to fight or be won. The entire text represents the battle that goes on in our minds, where physical arrows or weapons are not needed. It's about understanding how we can overcome difficulty, self-doubt, and ultimately live a life of truth and purpose. We think about Arjuna, literally in Sanskrit, the shining one, the symbol of us in our human form with all our doubts, worries, and habits. Arjuna represents each one of us as we stand on the battlefield of life, facing all the different parts of ourselves that prevent us from realizing our true nature. On a subtler level, Arjuna, the warrior, is a spiritual disciple who is determined to tread that way of return, the Nivritti Marga. At the same time, Krishna is a higher self, is a symbol of a higher self. The Pandava may be seen as the great virtues within us, the Kaurava, the opposing forces within us. The chariot may be seen as the physical body. The horses, our five senses that need to be guided by the self so that we can realize our true nature. And other characters are very interesting. Dhritarashtra, the one who holds the kingdom blind, the personality, being advised by Sanjaya, victory, who was blessed by Vyasa, and who could overhear the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. So he was the link between the higher mind and the lower mind, the personality represented by Dhritarashtra. Duryodhana, who can be called hard to fight, hard to beat? Desire. In fact, Dhritarashtra was not the king, in fact, ipso facto. It was Duryodhana who ordered him. It was desire, that subject that came up so much in these last days. So the battlefield scene, as we all know, is indicative of our life struggles. Arjuna's dilemma is our dilemma, which is the higher good, which course of action will uplift us, which will result in social betterment. What should be done? In a way, the question of what am I doing here? What's my mission? What attitude must be held? In answering Arjuna, Krishna is answering and guiding us all. And in that lies Gita's relevance today. The hosts he faces is the army of our attachments, beliefs, dear old things we cannot give up, institutions that prevent us from moving on. And a wonderful idea from the Bhagavad Gita is that it is the universal self, the Paramatma, if we can call it, that is the doer, that the Brahman acts through us. We need not stress out very greatly about what needs to be done. We can let actions flow through us, though the difficult part is when we crave for results, the fruit of action. Krishna says that we can remember that we are entitled only to our actions, but not to the results of our actions. We don't control that really. We should not be obsessed either with the result of our actions, or choose to do nothing. There are 5 factors that determine the success of anything, and the person doing it is only one of them. Do your best, try your hardest, and leave the result to God, whoever that may be for each one of us, karma, or life, or the universe. Some of us clearly feel a sense of control. When hungry, eating makes us full, exercise makes us healthy. We cannot accept or truly believe that there's a universal being that is acting through us. For such people, the Bhagavad Gita offers another idea. We are advised that we can dedicate all our actions to divinity, to God, to the higher self. Call it whatever you will. We eat, drink, play, work, and everything else as an offering to the divine inside. In today's confusing world, global forces wipe out individual efforts with no apparent rhyme or reason. The butterfly effect tells us that a butterfly flapping its wings in China could cause a tsunami in some other part of the world. An individual may feel that doing right and doing good is futile. We frequently feel that way. It's just a drop. What we do can be only a drop in the ocean. That is Maya. Such a person can derive strength from the idea that he needs to be attached only to doing right, and not attached to whether his efforts bear fruit, or to what fruit they bear, or who gets to enjoy such fruit. The Bhagavad Gita also answers the question of what must be attached to, if that word attachment is really the right one. Certainly not to work and achievement, to body and possessions, to comfort and pleasure. After all, this is what most humans are attached to. The Gita tells us to engage our mind with divinity. Even while we do things and enjoy things, why not? Have things or lose them, and in all kinds of circumstances, there's something that is better, higher, greater, joyous, uplifting, calming, strengthening than human circumstances and activity, even when we are in the middle of those activities and have some enjoyment. That is divinity. The Gita helps us be better, happier versions of ourselves. Even as we engage in the humdrum activities and experiences of the social world, we are involved in, whether we want it or not. So, the message of the Bhagavad Gita, as I said the first day, I think, in search of a word that could sum up the whole experience of the Bhagavad Gita, is the message of Dharma. It teaches that behind form there's a thinker who uses a form. I told you that Dharma is a totally untranslatable word. It can be virtue, duty, the right path, the spiritual path itself, right action, right thought. But mostly that which is correct at a given point of time, irrespective of what the world demands, or what the supposedly authoritative and pronouncement of the world demand. If there is a core message in Krishna's words, it would perhaps be, step out of illusion, be who you essentially are. Someone may call it the soul, the higher being, the inner being. They're just names. And only then you can find your true field of service. That's, after all, the main point, isn't it? So the Bhagavad Gita is truly a treatise of the soul, because it contains a complete picture of the soul and its unfoldment. The essence of the Bhagavad Gita is the vision of God in all things, and all things in God. It is, well, there's a statement in Dante's vision in the Divine Comedy, when he describes in his paradise, he says, in its profound infinity, I saw the scattered leaves of the entire universe enter, united by love in a book. I believe I have seen the universal form of this complex plot, because as I say this, I feel joy growing inside. And this is also the vision of Arjuna in the Gita, when in chapter 11 says, if the light of 1,000 suns suddenly appeared in the firmament, such splendor could be compared with the brilliance of the Supreme Spirit. And in that brilliance he saw the entire universe in all its variety, Arjuna of course, constituting a vast unity in the body of the God of gods. So love leads to light, but the light does not belong to us. This is one of the core messages of the Bhagavad Gita. It is given to us. It is given to us as a natural outcome of our poured love and our good deeds. In the battle of the Gita, we have a great symbol of hope, that he who has good will and strives is never lost, and that in the battle for eternal life, there can never be defeat unless we flee from battle. The true progress of man on earth is a progress of inner vision. We have scientific advances, but have they been harmonized with spiritual advance at this stage? We all welcome scientific advancement, but we also want spiritual advancement. It's not about having more or even knowing more. Maybe it's about living more in the true sense. And if we want to live more, we must simply love more. Love is a tricky word. we tend to consider love as a feeling. But love is a universal law. It's higher than the feelings and even the mind. So love is the treasure hidden in a field, and this field, according to the Gita, is our own soul. There's the treasure for which the wise merchant sold everything he had, and contrary to the law of matter, according to which giving more means having less, in the law of love, the more you give, the more you have. The finite in man longs for the infinite. That's the truth. The love that moves the stars also moves the heart of the sun. It's the same one. And the law of spiritual gravitation guides his soul towards the soul of the universe. Man sees the sun by the light of the sun and sees the spirit by the light of his own inner spirit. The radiance of eternal beauty shines upon his vast universe. And in moments of contemplation, we can see the eternal, intransient things, just in every corner. And that's why the power of observation is insisted upon. We may lead some apparently common lives, but at each step we find traces of the eternal, if we are able to see. And this is the message of the great spiritual visionaries. And all poetry, art, and beauty are just an infinite variation of the same message. If we read the scriptures and wisdom books of the world, if we consider the many spiritual experiences recorded in the books of the past, we find a single spiritual faith, as Blavatsky noted too. And that faith is based on a vision of truth. Blavatsky, by the way, in the logo of the Theosophical Society, called that truth Dharma, the path. But not the truth of the loss of nature, not of the truth of the loss of nature gradually discovered by the human mind, but of the truth of our inner being. There's another thing we spoke about yesterday. In the Gita, we find the true meaning of faith. A faith, as Marcela said today, based on certainty and spiritual vision. Once someone, if I recall correctly, it was Krishna Prem, he said that faith was the reflection in the lower mind of the knowledge already possessed by the higher mind. So, in a way, it was knowledge, though its grounds have not been yet recognized as such. So it is that, it's about that difference between our Christian concept of faith, that we wish it were so, and true faith involves some knowledge in the same way, I quoted that yesterday, that St. Paul defined faith. It is the hope of things, it is the substance of things hoped for, and the evidence, elenchon in Greek, evidence of things to come. It's an evidence. It's already there. We have the physical brain has to recognize it. So faith, true faith in the sense of that chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which defines faith in terms of 3 objects of devotion. Remember that, the purest faith being the one directed to the holy ones. There's also the dark folk who had that lower kind of faith, but faith after all is based on certainty and spiritual vision. And yet, there's another message that seems subtle but evident to me, and therefore I left it for the close of our work now. That every moment of our lives can be the beginning of great things, if we let action flow through us. We spoke about the great framework of the Gita, the Mahabharata, that great poem of 100,000 verses, which it was even longer than the Iliad and Odyssey plus all the Shakespeare's play bundled together. Yeah, it was written lately, after Christ, but it had been recited for thousands of years by heart. Would you do that? We have everything, we have those papers which reminds us what we had to do, but as the Egyptian myth of Thor says that when Thor, the god Thoth, Jehuti in ancient Egyptian, gave writing to mankind, as exchange, he took away their memory. That is so true. Some people still have that memory. If you go and try to study Sanskrit in India, for instance, you will be submitted to repeating by heart thousands of mantras, and the Western mind collapses. They don't, by the way. So, if the great poem Mahabharata has one message to deliver, it is that human being must concern itself with the quest for inner peace and real happiness, which are not of this world. That's the key message. It urges us to look for the kind of riches that we can take with us out of this world, sooner or later. But the Bhagavad Gita goes even deeper and is meant for those human beings determined to tread the path of discipleship. On the latter, we have been focusing these days we shared. So the message, again, let me repeat that. The message of the Bhagavad Gita is the message of Dharma. It teaches that behind form there is a thinker who uses a form. So the core message, it would perhaps be step out of illusion, be who you essentially are, the soul, and only then you can find your true field of service. And the point of view from which the Gita has been written is that it is a textbook of yoga, a guide to the treading of the path. By yoga here is meant not any special system called by that name, which, you know, when Patanjali says, here's a treatise on yoga, Atha Yoga Anushasana, the first of the yoga aphorisms, it could also be translated, this is a treatise for the union. We just have that word yoga and we transformed it into a whole system, but no, that's not what Patanjali says. This is how you attain union. This is the first aphorism. So, not jnana yoga, not karma yoga, not bhakti yoga, not the Eightfold Path of Patanjali, but just the path by which man unites his finite self with the infinite being. It is the inner path of which all these separate yogas are so many one-sided aspects. It is not so much a synthesis of these separate teachings as that prior and undivided whole of which they represent partial formulations. So I've picked up a series of thoughts, statements, and I would like to hear your statements too. How we can sum up the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. I came up with these ones, okay? And then you can even correct them. Okay? I won't be angry, just do it. So the first one, know yourself as the imperishable one. I think that's the first lesson. Control your mind, for through it the imperishable one can be known. Learn that form is nothing more than the veil that hides the splendor of divinity. Understand that the one life permeates all forms, so that there is no death, no suffering, no separation. Detach yourself, therefore, from the form aspect and come to me, Krishna. And thus you will dwell where light and life meet. And thus the illusion fades. So, your statements, corrections, or
I would love to add one more,
yeah.
which is we're here to perform our dharma, and Krishna reminded Arjuna what his dharma is. You are a kshatriya. You're behaving like not a kshatriya. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it.
Yeah, it's okay.
Kshatriya.
Yeah.
I heard it you too.
That's okay.
So I would add that.
And I will too.
that-
If you let me, I will add that to that list.
In Spanish.
Thank
so
you.
that we can-
In Spanish. So,
Those are incredibly well said, by the way.
Dharma, yeah, the message of Dharma, which, by the way, is
The one you
is a
wrote.
key word, in my opinion, the key word of the whole Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. Catherine.
No correction.
don't
Everything
worry.
said. But just suggesting an alternative definition of Dharma.
Please.
To me, it's the law of one's existence.
We could add to those 5 pages of a dictionary, we can add that definition, why not? You know, when you look for words like logos in Greek, and you have 10 pages, okay, oh God. And neither of them synonymous. That's the worst part. So that happens with Dharma. Yeah? Dan? You want to say, yeah, please.
No corrections, also. Just two additions. Praise that which is unborn, undying, and unchanging, which in a way summarizes Bhagavad Gita. And second, teach the children Bhagavad Gita in kids' words, so they can get the higher picture now when they're little, like Martin would say. Would be such an amazing gift for the kids, and teaching our kids, our grandchildren right now, we can start with that, but someone to write it, to rewrite it for children's book.
That was very insightful.
You know, in India, you can get the comic book of the Bhagavad Gita.
Well, as they have in
They're
India.
very well done. No, they're very
You
well
know, there was
done.
a soap opera in India and the whole city paralyzed because, you know, it was a Mahabharata.
I was living in India then. There were riots because to conserve power, they shut off television. And they happened to choose Sunday morning when the Mahabharata was playing.
Yeah.
And where I was, there was one television in the village and people were hanging off the doors and crying. And they shut off the time the Mahabharata was playing, and there were riots all over India. They never did that again.
In India, they like 2 things.
Yeah.
These stories, mythical stories, they are part of their own culture, and unfortunately, Argentinian soap operas, which sounds so weird when translated in Hindi. Okay, but let's not say with that. Okay, but this, yeah. But this, you know, in school, for instance, you have a child who is strong. It is common in India to say, you're like Bhima, one of a Pandava, son of a god of the wind, the strongest one, the fearless, literally the fearless one. So they have that, and I think, as I said the first day, one of the things we have not understood, that India is not something exotic. You know, the first linguists who discovered Sanskrit knew that. Sanskrit is of our own stem of languages. So India is a lost chapter of Western history too. If we think of that way, we see that even in our languages, we still have those roots of words, which also Sanskrit has, not only Greek and Latin. But in terms of our root race, you know, Blavatsky called that the fifth root race, the Indians being the first of the sub-races. But you know, maybe we have to consider these texts as part of our own culture. Okay, so yeah, please, Pablo.
I don't know if this could be added, but I think and we say something already, that the Bhagavad Gita could be a guide to learn to live.
Yeah, I think that for those who, because, you know, that great decision Arjuna had in that battlefield, I insist that it's such an amazing image. Two armies preparing to destroy themselves, and then in the middle of a battlefield, that wasn't heard of. So, first of all, how patient the armies were. What are they doing? Oh, they're talking about yoga. Why did you just sound the horn? Yeah, okay. But no, it's a decision, because, you know, all the obligations that we have contracted, spiritual institutions, families, ideas we have about ourselves, our nations, and all notions of divisions and separations, all that is that host Arjuna has to battle. So it is a decision to, once and for all, stop that pravritti marga of immersion into form, and once and for all start that path of ascent. It demands a decision, an intention, let me put it that way. So it's where all the rules change. So this is, in a sense, that symbol of the frozen moments when the battle is about to start. Because it's really, once you make that decision, it's really the moment when the real battle is about to start, with no weapons, but worse things, thoughts and ideas that you have to fight, and prejudices and all that, which is launched once you symbolically and technically put one's feet on the path. Yeah, Martin.
I would like your opinion in this idea that the Bhagavad Gita gives the imagery of only one person was able to get that illumination, so to speak, because there were millions of people in that battle.
Yeah.
Remember, the choice was me as your guide, not fighting, and 10 million or something like that, right? Fighters, my army. And there were millions, and so only one person was prepared, yet he symbolizes, like you said, all of us, so to speak, right? But only one person is meant to hear, understand, and realize the Dharma, what to be done. What's your opinion about only
Well,
one?
yeah.
Instead of
Yeah.
sorry, to complete the thought,
Yeah.
Krishna talking aloud like an avatar, and everybody get it, the illumination, which is in my ideal mind, that should be in the great war, is Krishna enlightening everybody by his power of illuminating people, but it didn't have only one.
Yeah. And nevertheless, Krishna had only one close connection, that was Arjuna. I think that's the moment of opportunity that happens at a certain stage. And Arjuna is the universal symbol of a disciple about to tread the path. But you know, if you sit on the light, but many cycles are to follow then. once the Bhagavad Gita is over, you know that I told you the end. Everyone except Yudhishthira fall into the abyss, including Arjuna. And at one stage, which is, I think that was the Anugita, another part of the Mahabharata, Krishna says, okay, Arjuna did not understand anything. Oh my God, how disappointing. So the story goes on, and once you make that decision, so many things are yet to come, so many cycles. The battle just begins. That's the wonderful thing, if we can call it wonderful. But so I think that taking into account that framework of the Bhagavad Gita, the great Mahabharata, is also useful.
So follow up. I'm sorry.
No, go on, Martin.
So can we say, like in the Voice of the Silence, this line that there is a road to take you to the path? Then the Bhagavad Gita is the road to listening to your master, but then there is a path.
Exactly.
Esoteric
It is
part,
exactly. It is as if
something like
that was a moment of delineating, outlining the path.
Very good, thank you.
And then comes the path itself,
Exactly.
the real thing.
Yeah.
So the battle is about to start.
Well, the Uttara Gita and so on.
Yeah, yeah.
I just wondered, have you seen Peter Brook's adaptation?
Yeah, I saw that.
The film.
Yeah, the film. There's a
Right.
very nice documentary on it. To why
Well, there was an.
there are 3 movies on the Mahabharata by Peter Brooks, the one who did also meetings with remarkable men, Gurdjieff's early
I don't
life.
mean the documentary, I mean the actual.
The actual
drama.
movie. There are 3 movies.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
you saw, okay.
Uh,
I saw it live, and then later I saw the film. Yeah.
Nice movie. Yes, Karen.
Just from a day-to-day point of view,
Yeah.
when you're feeling pressured by everyone to take an action you're not sure of, take the time to meditate, in touch with your higher self, and, you know, because I could see day-to-day, sometimes I guess I feel like Arjuna, you know, do this, and it's like, not sure, give me a minute.
Yeah, okay. Oh, sorry, Pablo was about to say something.
Last night I was thinking how fortunate we are to be at this moment in history and to be the head of this ancient literature, which is thousands of years old. And go with the same with Greece, with Europe, and so we inherit all this great knowledge, which is in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, Mahabharata, with all the great intelligence to insert there the Bhagavad Gita. Because if that book, it was there, hanging anywhere, we don't going to have it today. We get the Bhagavad Gita because this intelligent person were there. But also, we don't have the knowledge of one person. It's no Vyasa, it's no Krishna, but it's maybe the entire humanity who wrote this. Nobody think the 1001 Nights it was written by one person. It's not. In the Homeric work, the same. Maybe Homer was a group of people. What was interesting is that Arjuna need a teacher to guide him, not only in the battlefield, but to tell him, no, it's good, it's okay to fight. Because you never born. He decides, or at that moment he say, okay, I don't want to kill my parents, I don't want to kill my teacher, it's going fine.
You brought up a very controversial subject. You study the Homeric question, who was Homer, and so we can transfer that to the author Vyasa of the whole Mahabharata, which, by the way, means the whole the great humanity or the great India. Bharat is now the name of India, by the way, from this year on. But maybe it's the same as so many things, so many disciplines and sciences. And today, even today, in scholarly environments, they discuss whether it was the creation of a single school all of a sudden, or it was the development throughout the centuries. So we cannot know that. But the very fact that we don't know that is that it is a message to humanity that maybe well, we can speculate, the hierarchy wanted humanity to receive in some way. There are literally pieces of art, there's art, it's music, there are many means to transmit that message. And it has been so during all ages. So this particular piece of ancient literature, which, by the way, I remind you that it was sung, it was something with rhythm, with a specific melody, so may have that core message intended for humanity. And it's, as I said the first day, it's no use wondering whether the Vyasa or whoever wrote it, we don't know, Vyasa may be a mythical character, had that symbolism specifically in mind or not. Maybe he or she, why not, was a channel. Simply that. After all, the fact of being a channel is one of the main themes or motives of the Bhagavad Gita. Just with action itself, I mean, the idea that action flows spontaneously through you. So there will be no problem about what is service. This should be this. No, it's a spontaneous result of that energy, inflowing energy, that may be different in different people because we are of different notes or race. So there's no room for criticism or judgment. It's a spontaneous inflow from higher. I think this is one of the core messages of the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, please.
Well, I was just going to add that apart from that we're fortunate that we have these sacred works, it's also an incredible gift that we have teachers, people who are translating these works, and teachers who are keeping it alive by studying it, discussing it, bringing groups together where we can discuss it as a group. This is tremendous work, and whatever it is, whether it's channeling or it's a life force that you see the beauty of it. You and Marcella see the beauty of it, and you've brought a lot of that wisdom to us and fruit for thought. So I think we're very fortunate that there are people who are willing to devote their time, energy, life to studying these works.
We're all fortunate. We're all fortunate to be here. Well, maybe we have to end now. So. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. It's been wonderful. In fact, I was thinking, I wish I knew Spanish because I would start it all over. We thought about that?
Yes.
Yeah, right from the beginning again,
Yeah.
because there's just so much richness.
But they're so animated, we would be able to understand it anyway.
Oh, don't you have subtitles?
That would be lovely. Thank you to those who have come in online. We appreciate you very much. And yeah, the one image that I was thinking of too was that there's always that space in between the battles. You know, there's in the moment when the opportunity comes, it seems there's always enough space for us to do the right thing, or to get the little inclination that we need to move in one direction or another. But anyway, thank you so much. I want to thank especially Ananya and Annie and Rochelle, who have been in the background so much and helping everything to come together. And it's very, very much appreciated and needed.
And don't forget the concert tomorrow night.
Yes, we have the concert at 7 o'clock.
Oh, who's playing?
Somebody else. Hardly wait.
Krishna
Yes.
himself.
And I also have here a card for
Recording stopped.
Nelda Samaral, whose husband Jack, dear friends of ours, residents of Crotona,